Honda is making a huge investment in Central Ohio as uncertainty about the future of electric vehicles grows. This week, we take a deeper look into what this means for jobs and more investments in the Silicon Heartland. Plus, affordable housing continues to be a struggle, and not just for Columbus. It's all over the region.
There is overwhelming need for more housing.
We will hear from experts and why they say middle housing, like duplexes and townhomes, could be a solution. Plus, it's a solution we're seeing coming to life in New Albany. We'll show you two new development projects, one moving forward and another still in the works. Every week, we hear something new booming in Central Ohio, whether it's housing, jobs, or cars on the roads. The pressure is growing to make sure this region grows in the right way. Also, while being able to take care of the people who are already here. So, here's what we uncovered this week in Boomtown. Well, this week, a massive new development is being proposed for New Albany. So we are talking 573 acres northeast of where US 62 intersects with State Route 161. Right here, this is called the US 62 Interchange Focus Area. We do want to thank you for joining us this week in Boomtown. I'm Angela Ann. So what is driving this next development page for New Albany? Well, this week, I went to the city to get you some answers.
There's no question New Albany is booming, and there's one road city planners say is feeling the pinch the most. US 62, from the village center to State Route 161.
Yeah, if you drive down 62 today, you'll see a lot of drive-through restaurants, hotels, and oil change uses. However, we've also heard from residents and other stakeholders that they want to see more of a different type of development style, including sit-down restaurants and more pedestrian-friendly development.
Planning manager Chris Christian says nothing is set in stone, but the city has conducted site surveys elsewhere to compare, like Dublin's popular Bridge Park.
So those were used as kind of, a litmus test for what folks wanted to see developed in New Albany.
I mean, this is 573 acres. What concerns are you also hearing from people who might be saying, I don't want all that traffic in my neighborhood?
Yeah, it's definitely been at the forefront of all of our minds. We acknowledge that there's more historic, mid-century rural lots along Central College and along Kitzmiller Road. And then there's more intense development on US 62. And whatever happens in the middle or in between those spaces needs to acknowledge that existing context to be sensitive to it.
Christian also says the need for input is critical, given this area of New Albany now seeing the most development pressure.
And this week, New Albany held the last in-person presentation for the US 62 Interchange project. People there say they liked what they saw, and this is why they moved to New Albany in the first place.
There's this sense of the planners of this community really wanting to get input, wanting to maintain good economic and other kinds of diversity, and make this a welcoming community for everybody.
So for the next month, the City of New Albany will continue to take online comments and feedback before moving on to the next phase. We'll make sure to keep you posted with our Boomtown coverage. And this week, there is another new project in New Albany that got the final green light to move forward. Take a good look at these new renderings. This is right in the heart of New Albany's Village Center. The project could add 104 townhomes, apartments, even stores. Right now, the vacant land is just northeast of Eagle's Pizza. And this week, New Albany's Architectural Review Board approved the plans that will also include commercial space and some new restaurants.
And by increasing the number of people living and working in this area, the project will support existing and new retail offerings in our community, which is something that we know residents are really excited for.
This week, we are taking a deeper look into Honda's $1 billion investment into Central Ohio. The Marysville plant is 4 million square feet, so we're talking roughly the size of 70 football fields. And this is all being transformed into a new hub for electric vehicles. 10 TV's Clay Gordon went behind the scenes with Honda to show us how a shift in production could be impacted by recent tariffs.
Inside the massive Honda plant in Marysville, 40 years of history now looks like this. The newest concept vehicles, including this Acura RSX, which is expected to be made in Marysville. Even though the facility's footprint is mostly staying the same, its carbon footprint will look a lot different. 10 TV was allowed inside to see how it is being transformed from energy-efficient lights and HVAC to merging what would be 3 assembly lines into 1. And it's all being done at the same time new cars are still rolling off the line.
You don't want to disrupt production, not only in all of the other external noise activity that's taking place, but also the quality of the product that you're currently building.
Gas, battery, or this hybrid battery production line already assembled in Marysville. The old paint portion of the plant has now been repurposed for the new EV assembly.
So we were able to actually take parts of our facility and repurpose them instead of building new. That helped not only in the lead time to be able to bring products like this to the market faster.
Part of the billion-dollar investment in Central Ohio is going to the Anna engine plant. This 2.8 million square foot facility sits on 505 acres, and it cranks out more than 4,800 engines a day. More than 1.1 million engines will still be manufactured here every year, but it will start making the aluminum die-cast battery casings for EVs with these mega casting machines.
This is much larger than anything Honda's ever used before. Our plant's largest machine is 3,500 tons, so we're about twice the size.
And how many machines like this do you have?
We'll have 6 of these installed when we're done. We have 5 installed partially today, and we'll have the 6th one coming in later this spring.
This is half of the casing. It moves on to inspection by multi-camera robots. Defects or scraps can be recycled and melted back down. The 2 casings are welded together and then shipped to the Marysville auto plant. And when ready, it goes to the same line that can install combustion, hybrid, or battery electric motors.
We were very intentional about creating flexibility in this Gen 1 transformation.
You mentioned flexibility. How important is it now with the new administration in talking about cutting EV credits, cutting car EV plant manufacturing loans down? How important is it now to be as flexible as possible?
Yeah, I think that for us, that flexibility is just paramount. And it was for that very purpose that there's so many things outside our circle of influence that have the potential for us to drift from that, and we've been very, very intentional about making sure that we as a company have the flexibility to move based on what the world and move based on what our customers need.
One of the big things we're hearing about potential tariff talks is in the auto manufacturing space. So how has Honda maybe insulated itself from depending on maybe neighboring countries with parts?
I think in general for us, it's just really about, as a company, that we're setting a flexible manufacturing business model, and from our EV hub perspective of setting a base business model that we understand what lifts, shifts, and translates that insulates you from those was a good starting point for us to understand. And it manages the drift that you had based on administrations. And so as a result, we think that we really made a really good strategic decision and position, not only for our associates, for our company, for the state, but ultimately for our customers.
Honda is now committed to triple action to zero, its version of carbon neutrality and zero environmental impact by the year 2050. The first Acura EV performance vehicle is expected to be made here by the end of this year. In Marysville, Clay Gordon, 10 TV News.
That was certainly an inside look, Clay, at the Honda. I mean, I drive a Honda, and I just love seeing like how these cars are made. But it sounds like this is a huge transformation. What are they doing to make sure like they don't disrupt, you know, what's going on right now because of these changes?
And that's really the biggest thing. You take any auto manufacturer across the country, right? And you know, if they want a new car, a new line, and sometimes they build a whole new plant for that. and that takes time. That takes years to do something like that. Honda up in Marysville decided to keep their exact same plant, it's almost same exact square footage, barely adding anything to it, and then taking out old lines, shifting things over, putting in these new lines. So they're literally making new cars right now. New Acuras are rolling off the line, as you saw, and then at the same time they're prepping for the future with this new line that could literally do 3 different cars in one. So we're talking gas, we're talking electric, and we're talking hybrid at the same time. And then eventually, when everything is ready to go, they will be able to interchange certain motors depending on what the headwinds are going on, some of the market situations, everything fluctuating with the economy, with with foreign policy, with any kind of White House administration in years to come, and they could just literally almost flip a switch and just change their trajectory of the cars they want to produce.
Really just pivot on a dime if they have to do that.
Yeah, literally.
You mentioned Honda's push for carbon neutrality by 2050, and when people hear carbon neutrality, they think environment. Let's first talk about what is that, and then what is Honda really doing now to take those steps to get there?
Yeah, well, part of that is, with going to electric vehicles, that kind of brings down some of the carbon footprint, right? But they're trying to really reduce their plant footprint as well, and that's with, everything that we talk about on a daily basis, going to renewable energy sources, which is like either natural gas or electricity that's renewable. But then I thought something that was really cool. After these new cars come out in 2025 off this line, they're going to reclaim some of those cars in the future. So they're going to actually take some of those old parts, and we're talking the aluminum. I know we're talking about aluminum tariffs right now going on, so aluminum is very expensive to make, but they're making it now at Anna's engine plant, and we'll get into that. But they'll be able to take the tires, the aluminum, other parts of it, and then recycle those cars. It's in some case melt it down, put it back into new things, and then so they're taking old cars, and then they'll be able to put those into brand new technology.
2050, I mean, it sounds far away, but it really isn't when you think about how much we really need to do to get carbon neutrality.
And that's complete carbon neutrality. They're already doing some of these things already. So we took part of that story was we went to the Anna engine plant, and in there you could see those 5,000 ton machines that are literally injecting aluminum, crushing it, and then the byproduct of that, the waste will get cut off, fall to the ground. They scoop that back up, throw it back into the furnace, and then they keep doing it. And then if there's a defect in one of those things, they have all those machines that are checking with photos and lasers to make sure everything is a perfect part. If the part's not perfect, guess what? You could put it right back into the furnace, you could melt it down, and then re-inject it and go again.
That's so neat. Ohio is such a huge manufacturing state. Of course, Ohio, auto manufacturing for sure. What do you think this shift is doing for workers and jobs here, especially when we're looking at more EV?
So one thing I asked about, because you see a lot of those robots now. There's a lot of automation in there. And the first thing you think, what does that mean for people's jobs? And if you look at some of the jobs here already, we have 2,700 employees over at the East Liberty Auto Plant. We have 4,200 workers at the Marysville Auto Plant. Now, I asked the spokesperson what this means now with the automation, and they said the employment's going to remain stable, which is good. So, we're not losing jobs with this. In fact, he said they're going to add 300 new jobs. But then if you look kind of farther down there, there's a major battery facility. This is a joint battery project with LG Energy Solutions. So it's Honda and LG coming together. They're going to create 2,200 jobs in a huge battery facility in Jeffersonville. That's supposed to be online some part later this year. So more jobs are coming our way. And, that's $1 billion investment, and this is how it's going to 4 plants here across Ohio.
And when we talk boomtown, right, you said LG. I mean, that's huge. And so are more of these types of companies really looking at Ohio because of boomtown, because we have the workers, we have the facilities, we have that infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where this is telling the entire world that we're capable of doing something like this, and an investment in our workers and into our area, into our state, is worth every penny for some of these major corporations.
I could talk about this forever because I love the fact that this is in our backyard. But how do you think this is really affecting overall manufacturing? It's just not auto. Could this be bleeding into other sectors?
Well, I mean, just let's talk about auto for a second. We're hearing massive layoffs across a lot of other manufacturers here. We're not seeing that right now in Marysville and in Honda. So this could be the way of the future in the auto manufacturing. A lot of companies are looking ahead. And with tariffs, with all this could be a major player of the model to go to potentially in this one industry.
So exciting, especially because you're on the front end of this too.
Yeah.
So really neat.
It's right in our backyard.
I love
it's
it.
so cool. And it's not going anywhere, which is the best part.
Awesome. Thanks, Clay. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Andrew.
So, as Honda moves forward, the future of electric vehicles isn't quite certain. This week, the Trump administration directed states to stop spending money on infrastructure where EV car owners can plug in and charge up. So we're talking about the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, or NEVI. The Biden administration created that program back in 2021, where EV owners can basically get a full charge in as little as 20 minutes.
I mean, even if they're at rest areas, anywhere on the way to somewhere out of town would be very helpful.
The program had promised to invest $5 billion in charging stations across the states, but that funding is now on hold. We did reach out this week to Drive Ohio about this. This organization helps implement those charging stations around the Buckeye State. The agency told us, quote, Ohio has 19 stations open to the public, and operation of these stations is not expected to change. Now, keep in mind, the Trump administration may need an act of Congress to officially freeze the state's spending on this issue. So take a look at this map again in case you need to know where you can charge up here in the Buckeye State right now. 10 TV was there in Madison County back in December of 2023. That's when the first of the 19 charging stations was first unveiled. Well, as Columbus continues to grow, so does the need for more housing. A new study from the Affordable Housing Alliance of Central Ohio found that over 50% of people say they have been personally and negatively affected by the housing shortage. Well, today, 10 TV's Tara Jabor tells us what some of those solutions could actually look like.
The Affordable Housing Alliance of Central Ohio surveyed over 1,300 people here to talk about housing. Now, one of the biggest findings of their study was that there needs to be more middle housing in this region. So that includes things like duplexes and townhomes. The need for more housing in Central Ohio is clear.
More than 50% of people say that they have been personally and negatively affected by our housing shortage.
Carly Booz, the executive director of Affordable Housing Alliance of Central Ohio, says one key to address the housing crisis is creating more options for housing.
That there are people who think a duplex might fit well for them or an in-law suite might help meet their family's needs.
Booz says if there is more middle housing like duplexes and townhomes, then people can have something that is more affordable and in between an apartment and home. We spoke to one woman who just bought a home at the end of December.
It was a lot more of a competitive market now than even when I purchased a home just 5 years ago.
She told us the lack of options and high mortgage rates are two big challenges for home buying.
Having more affordable options and also options that are just easier to maintain.
We spoke to another man who told us he would like to see less apartment buildings popping up in Columbus.
I personally would prefer more like single family homes versus like large like condominium. We need to have more of an ability for families to have homes versus large apartment buildings.
Booz says that they conducted the survey to get people talking about housing needs in Central Ohio. She says with the new Zone In initiative from the city, it should allow opportunities for more types of housing.
These things will not happen automatically, but if we stand up as a community and say this is what I want, it's inevitable.
And we'll have a link to the full survey results on our website, 10tv.com. Reporting in Columbus, Tara Jabor, 10 TV News.
Tara, thanks so much. Now, this week we learned Jobs Ohio, a private nonprofit that works on economic development in the state, was granted a 15-year extension. Jobs Ohio still has 13 more years on its current contract with the state. It is funded through profits from state liquor sales. Now, the nonprofit entices companies to come to Ohio through grants, talent development, and loans. And the Ohio Chamber of Commerce says Jobs Ohio is truly critical in bringing large companies to our state.
If we want to consistently land these mega projects, the Intels, the Hondas, the Enduros of the world that are bringing really high-paying six-figure jobs to the state of Ohio and advanced manufacturing technology to the state of Ohio, we have to give Jobs Ohio more bandwidth to go out and compete against other states.
Well, Ohio University is hoping to recruit more students into the workforce through virtual reality. The Voinovich School recently took VR headsets into high schools all across Southeast Ohio. Just look at this, really giving those students a sense of what it's like to work in internet expansion. Right now, more than 50% of residents still cannot readily access high-speed internet in that part of our state, and an estimated 30,000 workers will be needed in this field. It's a neat little recruitment tool right there. We're always working to seek solutions for you and your family with our Boomtown series, so you can catch our 10 TV Plus original, Welcome to Boomtown, and you'll see our stories anytime. I'm Angela Ann. Thanks so much for watching This Week in Boomtown.